All the second stage tanks now pressurized. Astronauts report it feels good. T-minus 15 seconds. Guidance is internal. 12, 11, 10, 9. Ignition sequence start. 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Like a furry torpedo to the jugular. This is Honey Badger Radio. Radio with bite.
Machines!
I don't think you laugh. Hello and welcome to HBR Talk 401, the Incel Trip. The Incel Trip. We are going back to an article we started eons ago. It's actually been about a month, I think, since we looked at this article. So we'll do a little bit of a recap, but we're still going to skip most of what we already read and start where I think I remember us stopping. So hopefully we won't duplicate too much. But anyway, I'm your host, Hannah Wallen, here with Nonsense Annihilator Lauren Brooks. Hello. The personification of perceptivity, Mike Stevenson.
You bet your bottom!
Richard the Lionhearted.
Hello.
And the Doge in charge, Brian Martinez, who is working in the background to make sure everything happens. But before we get into it, we got to do what we got to do. And that is to let you know that, as always, Honey Badger Radio dishes out a smorgasbord of thought-provoking discussions, and as experiences recent and long past have demonstrated, the provoked thoughts are fighting back. They've made it clear that for people like us, relying on third-party payment platforms like Patreon to fund our work is treading on thin ice, or building our house in the path of a rapidly growing wildfire. In light of this, we strongly encourage our supporters to switch at least their support for us to feedthebadger.com, the most stable way to help us out. And if you want to tip us directly instead of relying on any social media platform's tip jar, the link for that is feedthebadger.com/justtip. And as always, the same risk applies to our social media platforms, which is why you should further provoke the thought police by tracking our thought-provoking discussions on honeybadgerbrigade.com, where you can find your way to all of our content, as well as a link to feedthebadger.com in the drop-down menu at the top of the page. And so, some people apparently this morning did. One this morning and one this afternoon. We have Dark Kiki Kimura gave us $5 and said, here's what coffee here in NYC for you and Allison would cost. Good morning. So many people don't understand how a gaming stream can be a mental health stream. That was probably during a stream. Did you do a gaming stream this morning, Brian? That probably is what that is. And then Zapier at about 2 p.m. gave us $5 and didn't say anything. Just gave us $5. So thank you, Zapier, and thank you, Dark Kiki Kimura. And with that, we will get into the topic. Let me minimize my other page here, though, because I can't see the topic. There we go. So I think this is where I showed you guys, like, the thing that made me decide I was going to do this. Remember, this is the lady that starts out talking about these guys, like, they're hateful, angry because they're angry and lonely, and they talk to each other, and that's basically it. Since they talk to each other, that makes them hateful.
Oh my God.
And of course, then she goes on Reddit. There are whole groups which appear to be dedicated to blaming women for everything. One group called r/men's rights has 363,800 members, which is great because I can remember when I only had like 1,000. But we're all men there, see. So it's and we all hate women. None of us who are female that have been active on that subreddit are real people. We don't exist. So I'm actually a figment of all y'all's imagination.
I happen to know Hannah is a man. Like hundreds of people on Twitter have assured me that Hannah cannot possibly be anything but a man. So
Yeah.
bear that in
It assured
mind.
me too. But my name is under mother on one birth certificate. So that's my woman card. It's the only woman card I will accept. That one comes with responsibilities.
I was about to
So,
start singing Danzig, Mother.
that is right. But that's how we started with this, learning about that. And then we discovered that she chose guys that she could make fun of, right? And make fun she did. Starting with, the story about one guy's penis. And then, let's see, what else we have with him. Oh, no. Yeah, she linked Reddit to unite the and Discord to unite the right, even though there are literally millions of Discord servers, like from everything, from crochet groups, which I will plead guilty to being in a couple of those, to every game and many that you don't, and probably quite a few that you don't care about, to people using Discord for their work meetings and stuff like that, to stuff like what we're doing. But it was totally just about planning that. And she couldn't talk about this guy, right, without saying nasty things about him. Let's see, what was it? The ketchup thing, or maybe it wasn't ketchup. Yep, tomato sauce.
Yeah.
She had to point out that he had
His mouth.
tomato sauce around his mouth, right? Ketchup on his mouth. Yeah. So I'm sitting here as I read this. This was the point where I was like, yeah, this woman's attitude has to be put on display. This was a detail that you would only include in an article if you were trying to humiliate the individual that you were interviewing, and make anybody that you might associate with him embarrassed at that association. There's no other purpose for that. Like,
I mean, a man having food around his mouth should, in any given context, should be a good thing. Like, I kiss him and I get nutrition as a result of kissing him because he has fucking tomato sauce or tomato sauce around his mouth. Whatever it is, this covers various continents of this. And like, my lady friend here, Lauren, very often wears lip balm, and every time I kiss her, I get lip balm on my own lips, and I'm like, well, shit, thank you. Not only do I get to experience the soft kiss of your own lips, but I also get lip balm adapted to my own lips, and I'm like, well, this is a win-win.
There you go.
Not only do I get to feel the softness of your face, my face becomes even softer, and I get to protect myself from.
You get moisturized.
Exactly, I get to protect myself from the various dryings of nature. And wait, what were we talking about again? What was this bitch? What was this bitch's problem? I fucking forgot.
Get with this guy
It was
while he
about
was
the guy.
eating. He got food on his face while he was eating.
Oh
Which
yeah, you
was
got fucking ketchup on your lips. Yeah, well, yeah. Well, there you go. You get to eat ketchup when you kiss a man. Like, what the fuck is the problem with it?
But she's a journalist, though. She
Yeah,
didn't want the guy.
The funny thing is, I don't know very many people that eat at Pizza Hut that don't get food on their face.
Right.
like if you want pizza that it has that is pretty well saturated in butter, Pizza Hut. Even the deep dish, like the bottom part of it is pretty well saturated. But yeah. I just can't imagine. I think I get food on my face every time I eat at Pizza Hut, which isn't very often because I'm old now and I can't handle it.
This is one of the best things about having someone to kiss. Like, it doesn't matter what food you have on your face. You can just kiss each other, and then you get to ingest each other's food. And in a way that sounds gross, but in a way it's weirdly romantic.
There you go. But the dumb thing is, like, what is this article about, right? She says she's writing about something she calls the Incel Trap. So if I thought something was a trap, right? If I thought a group was conning people or miring people in or into behaviors, lifestyles, whatever, that are detrimental to them or dangerous to the public, believe me, when I was writing about them, I would be focusing on the details of that con or that pit that they're getting mired in, that pattern of thinking that is so toxic and deadly and enclosing that people couldn't escape from it. But what does she do? She focuses on making fun of these guys as human beings for being human. And that's the upshot of what I've seen in this part so far.
And that's the basis for every incel documentary.
Yep. And I haven't seen, like, that seems to be the underlying theme in every article we've read about incels. Even the one we've been looking at in the after show because it was old, where the lady that recently asked on X if incels would talk to her had written about the men's rights movement and about incels. She seemed to be more bent on, like, even while admitting that men's issues are valid and men have reasonable positions on them, she still seemed to want to make fun.
But they're only coming at it now because everything's stopped working properly.
Yep. And I think that's a common thread with the women writers that I'm also seeing. It's like, back in the day, there used to be this thing, and for people who like B horror movies and people who like memes, people will know what I'm talking about. There were several small and one really big company that used to travel around the United States, and I'm sure there were some in other countries as well, with circus shows in tents, and they would have different attractions. They'd have animals, they'd have acrobats, they'd have all kinds of different places set up. They'd have a little petting zoo with little animals, and they have big animals that you could look at. And in the big tent, in the show tent, there would be animal shows and stuff like that. But then there would be off to the side somewhere, there'd always be this little area with either one tent or several tents where people with something unique about them or unusual about them would put their unusualness on display. And it'd be things like the bearded lady or the sword swallower, or sometimes it'd be people who were born without certain limbs, and it was called freak shows, and they were referred to as freaks. They referred to themselves as freaks, and there were all kinds of different things, like people who were especially bendy back then that would go on America's Got Talent today and do spooky dances and stuff. They would have a tent there, and they would do their act in that tent, and people used to that was their living, right? Well, that kind of became politically incorrect, and in the I want to say it started in the 70s, around the 1970s, maybe the late 70s, and then it went through the 80s, the 90s. I think it still existed pretty heavily during the early part of the 21st century. It switched from being people who operate in tents in circuses to people going on various talk shows like the Jerry Springer show and showing off their uniqueness, or for often a different type of freaks. Like I think the infamous
The
interview
Murray show,
between, huh?
the Murray Perfect show,
Yep, Maury Povich.
and Sally Jesse Raphael.
Yep, Sally Jesse Raphael and Vicki Lawrence, who was Mama on Mama's Family. After they started doing the sketch Mama's Family on the Carol Burnett show, Vicki Lawrence had her show. There were a bunch of different ones. Jerry Springer was the most famous. Geraldo Rivera, that people know now from Fox News, he had one. He did this totally infamous interview with neo-Nazis, and they beat him up. He got his nose broken a few times.
And Al Capone's fault as well.
Yeah, Al Capone's fault. That was when he was doing his switch from crazy talk show guests to actual journalism, and that flopped really badly. But, I still like the guy. He seems like he means well most of the time. But once that started to become politically incorrect, that seems to have been, now we've got these articles. Look at these weirdos and what they do. Look at the way they think. Aren't they strange? There's something wrong with these people. Hor, hor, hor. And it's clickbait. And they do it with people who have valid concerns, who are suffering, and who have needs that really should be met, that aren't being met, because the rest of society would prefer to just pretend they don't exist instead. And that includes a large portion of the manosphere. And so you see
it's mostly the pickup artists and the red pillars and MGTOW guys, and some MRAs don't like incels.
Yeah, I know some MRAs don't like anybody who's not an MRA, but the thing is, the rest of the public, they don't mostly know what's going on, and a lot of these journalists really would prefer if we just disappeared. There no more men's rights activism, that they could just get back to promoting the feminist narratives that everything in women's lives is bad and it's all men's fault and men have to do something about it, in capital letters. They would rather just we get out of the way of that. But since we don't, this is what they do. They find people like Alex, who has valid points. For instance, the statement here, it's offensive, to be quite frank, me being told I'm responsible for the violence of other men, he says. When Alex warms to a theme, he talks faster and louder and vibrates with anger, like he's orating from his Pizza Hut pulpit. See, she has to minimize that, because what he's saying is valid and right.
Yeah. But she's just got to find some way to dunk on him, because that makes her the moral majority.
Yep.
Get out of here.
Yeah. It's very much like, if you had somebody come into a retail establishment, let's say you worked in a retail establishment and you sell cheap 3-pronged widgets, and then you sell fancy, high quality, more expensive 3-pronged widgets. And Bob wants the high quality So he's willing to pay the price for the fancy 3-pronged widget. But you're always out of those. And he comes in one day and he complains. He says, "Are you going to order more of those? Because every time I come in, you're out of them and I really need one." And instead of saying, well, we'll get them in on this day. I'll make sure we have a few extras, anything that you would say for a customer, you look at him and you say, "You drive a fucking dump truck." Like, so? Or let's see, what else do women look at as something they can look down on?
Oh, Jesus, everything.
You have too much facial hair on your neck.
Yeah, your hair, your clothes,
if you have a disability.
Yep.
Yeah.
Why would you need the fancy? Don't talk to me about the fancy 3-pronged widget. You walk with a limp.
Mm-hmm.
What's wrong with you? Just go get the other one. Like, it's completely unrelated. It doesn't matter if he's talking loud. It doesn't matter if he's a little nerdy in the way that he explains to you what he's thinking. The thought he's expressing isn't wrong. It is fucking offensive to be told that you're responsible for other people's actions.
The guy's probably ugly. That's why she takes offense of what he's saying. If it was Calivia talking, she would accept it.
Quite possibly. Although he is defending men, which might make, I think this woman is probably a feminist.
But I'm told on good authority that women don't care if you're ugly. They only care if you're rich. Well, it's very much both. We are at that stage where modern women are at that stage where they're not interested if you're ugly and they're not interested if you're poor. Like, either. You're a millionaire and you're ugly. Women don't give a shit. You're beautiful, but you're poor. Well, women could extend themselves to give a shit, but at the end of the day, they're looking for someone who is beautiful and rich.
Yeah.
So deal with that as best you can, gentlemen.
They will fuck your brains out if you're beautiful and poor. But women have taken every. But women have taken every cope away from men that they've had. So they made every cope men had illegal, or they made it rubbish, like video games.
Yeah.
Women have made video games rubbish over the past 10, 12 years.
It's been an ongoing tragedy, honestly. And the sad thing is it isn't just video games. It's just games in general. The tabletop games were under attack before video games even. And I can remember when it was hard for me to find another female gamer that played tabletop RPG type games. Like, if I was at somebody's party and somebody would get out, Monopoly or one of those traditional, like, there'd be plenty of people of both sexes interested. But if I was looking for somebody to play Dungeons and Dragons with, it was always going to be guys, because there weren't. I couldn't find another girl in my whole school that even knew anything about that game. Like, they didn't. If you just said, "Hey, you want to go play Dungeons and Dragons?" they would have thought you were inviting them to something nefarious. And that was the most well known. Like, if you said, "Hey, you want to go play Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles?" they would have looked at you like you grew a second head. Is that a board game? What is that? What is it about?
Something to do with sex, Jen. Far from it.
Like, and you get more obscure than that. It goes downhill from there, right? So, like, none of them ever heard of Star Frontiers. None of them ever heard of Gamma World, and certainly none of them ever heard of Tales from the Floating Vagabond. But yeah, and feminists would definitely, just as Senior Sticks says, they would call me a misogynist for saying that. But it was my experience. Like, I was a sophomore in college before I was a sophomore in college the first time I met another woman who played tabletop RPGs. Of course, I didn't go to gaming conventions, so but like the whole time I was in high school, going to other high schools to photograph sporting events and all kinds of stuff, never saw anybody come to school in any kind of clothing that you know, advertised any kind of tabletop RPG, like all that stuff. You kept it under wraps if you did that, so that you didn't get a wedgie that went up so high you could taste it.
Hmm.
You know, you didn't get to explore the sewers while your hair was being styled via toilet bowl. But yeah, it was very much like all dudes. You know, and it wasn't something that I would complain about. Like, it was fun because I was involved with creative people. But all of a sudden, in the mid 90s, more young women started to discover this gaming environment. Female nerds started to realize that that's what all the guys were doing on the weekends, that were too scared to ask them out or had already gotten married. And so, well, the jocks had football widows sitting at home, the nerds had D&D widows sitting at home.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of them, their wives wouldn't even try it. Like, I have to give credit at least to one woman. She did try it. She didn't like it. It wasn't her thing. She wasn't into playing pretend, so she wasn't into that. But she at least gave it a chance, which was very big of her. But for the most part, it wasn't until the mid 90s that you really started seeing. You had to be in an area where there was a really prolific RPG gaming culture to find another female. And once it became a more female saturated hobby, then you started to see female criticism of gameplay. That's too violent. That's too sexual. Right? That's too harsh. These rules, these house rules, I don't like them. Can't we just go by the standard rules? Or these standard rules, I'm disadvantaged by them. Can we have a house rule to fix that? You know, and mooching off of their party members. You know, it really was a different environment, right? And shit talk disappeared fast.
It's the idea that Call of Duty and Candy Crush are essentially different. But I mean, what is Candy Crush? It's lining up 3 shapes so that they will destroy the other shapes around them. It's something like that, isn't it? It's like Tetris.
Yeah.
It's like if you line these shapes up in a certain order, they will destroy each other. And I'm sorry, but that's basically war. It's an amalgamation of what war is. If you get enough of these infantry battalions of a certain symbol lined up against a certain infantry battalion of a different symbol, then one of them will win against the other, and they will destroy the other. So the games that women love are basically the same as the games that men love. It's war. It's just that women prefer it when it's presented as a puzzle, and men prefer it when it's presented as a war. And a war is a puzzle, and a puzzle is a war. It's all the same. It's just presented from different directions.
Like chess.
Yeah.
Like chess. Well, chess is very much a male-dominated game.
Yes. Yeah.
And we could look into why that might be. But you know, there are games that women prefer, like Farmville. And Farmville is a bit like chess. There's all sorts of games a bit like chess that women prefer more than men, and it does come down to strategy. It does come down to tactics. Men and women both love games that are based on strategy and tactics, but they differ slightly in the way that they work.
And some of them are completely devoid of giant robots.
Yes.
Sadly.
Yes.
Do you want to read the paragraph that you left off?
But yeah. Back to this. I will leave it at this. Right. If you played D&D in the 1980s and sat in a room full of guys and you had a particularly hated non-player character that had just been dogging the party for the longest time, and you finally got to fight him, and you finally got to injure the guy, right? And your DM is one that actually uses the hit chart or the injury chart, that you have a D20 and various numbers correspond to various places, and he rolls anywhere on the torso. You get this spectacular description of how the player disemboweled this evil enemy NPC, and everything from guts oozing across the floor to, oh, he had lamb for dinner. You can still see the little pieces, but as soon as you have a room that's half female, somebody has to get up and go vomit. Not as much fun anymore, especially if she gets mad about it afterward. But anyway, it is what it is, and that is how things have changed in pretty much every area of men just hanging out with other guys, and the few women that don't try to change everything they're doing just because a female has walked into the room. But I think we stopped actually in this area. I was down here for the longest time, but I might be wrong. We might have read this too. So I'm going to briefly recall this. She talks about hypergamy, which is essentially just women marrying up. It's not about men marrying up because that's really not been a thing. It's basically just women marrying up. And she talks about how Alex, this guy that she's interviewing, perceives it, and obviously you can't marry up if the guy doesn't have money and status greater than your own. And it does date back at least 3,000 years. It probably dates back to the very first ever in any culture arranged marriage. Because if you think about it, let's say you have two kids, and obviously, back then people had a lot more kids, but let's say you have two kids that you're pretty sure they're going to reach adulthood, and those two kids, one of them's male and the other one's female. So what you can expect from the male child is that as he starts to go into adulthood, as he starts to age into adulthood and mature into adulthood, he's going to bring another worker into the family, and she's going to birth more workers. His worker that he brings into the family is going to birth more workers for the family. And one way or another, they'll do work. Either they'll be preparing resources for the family, or they'll be gaining resources for the family. So, he can afford to bring in somebody based on what she's going to do, not just based on what she has, right? And similarly, he is obligated to take care of you when you get older. It's his job, and that'll be probably her responsibility, the wife. But the other child, the female, she's going to leave when she becomes an adult. And if she doesn't, you're going to have to support her for the rest of her life. She might be a worker. She's not going to produce more workers for you. If she does, they're going to be illegitimate children. They're going to be mouths to feed, and they're not going to have a father with them to help with that. And so she's going to be a liability if she stays with you. So you want her to go with somebody she's not going to leave. She's not going to abandon and run away. So of course you're going to find somebody that has more shit than you have, so that his home and his family are more attractive to her than yours. And as an added bonus, you get to be friends with that family now because one of your kids is married into that family. So hypergamy stems from that kind of outlook in that kind of situation. But this woman doesn't really get into any of that. She just refers to it as a buzzword in the manosphere for gold digging. Well, that attitude being that old and being that ingrained, it's not gone away, right? Most of modern history, women have gotten messages like, you better shop around, get that bag. Right? Don't be dating some lowlife, deadbeat piece of junk. Tell him to hit the road, Jack. But definitely marry up. If he's going to be romantic, and of course the idea of romance is something that was invented by aristocrats, wealthy French ladies, actually, wealthy French aristocrats about 600 years ago. And it got thrown in there with hypergamy. And the next thing you know, men have to just flat out buy women's affection with diamonds and gold jewelry and fancy parties and massive compliments and kowtowing behavior. Oh, don't get my lady's feet wet. Let me throw my expensive jacket over this nasty mud puddle so you can walk on it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So
yeah,
then
no,
she goes,
like it was never not gold digging.
Mm-hmm.
It was just we just found a way to colloquialize what actually is happening and
Yeah,
put
it was
a
always gold digging.
It was always gold digging. It still is gold digging. It's never not going to be gold digging.
It just used to be that the father was gold digging on his daughter's behalf in order to ensure that he wasn't going to be saddled with another mouth to feed when she ran away from her new home.
Or several mouths to feed if she came back home with babies, right?
Yep.
So, it's always been that. But what's happening now is that women are trying to find a way to justify the behavior.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry, it just doesn't, there's never going to be another way to paint this. This is what it is. And you may not like that. Sorry for your loss. But that's what it is. Either you move different or you just accept what the fuck it is.
Yep.
That's the way it is. Like my a friend of mine, not gonna call her, well, no, a neighbor. She's an immigrant, right? She's not legal. She married here and had a kid. She married the man, right? So she got green card status or whatever. But, she had a kid with him. And so she sat on my couch one day and said, I shouldn't have to work. I can find a man that's going to pay for me and my lifestyle, and I shouldn't have to do this. And like, what? Meanwhile, her ex-husband is paying for her entire existence because she's got his kid. But
so
no.
She moved here, got married, got green carded, got pregnant, had an anchor baby, got divorced, and now she feels entitled to be a kept woman.
Correct. I shouldn't have to
let him keep her.
Right.
But,
no, I shouldn't have to get a job, and now she's got some new boyfriend that's paid. It's just a whole situation. But anyway, the point still stands. It's always been gold digging, and if you really want to be these independent women that you claim to be, then maybe you stop digging in a man's wallet. How about that?
Yeah. Yep. Gee, Pete. So, after establishing that Alex knows hypergamy and that she doesn't believe in it and thinks it's just a euphemism for gold digging, which it is, but it's not, because it's also about ensuring, that, like I said, the wife isn't going to go taking off because the resources are there in the home. Although now the government has, in our country and several others, the government has decided that if she decides to leave the home, she can take the resources with her. So we don't have a good marriage system anymore.
In the UK
And the kids. Yep, and the kids. She just gets to take everything but the important part of the marriage, the most important part of the marriage. But in any case, he has recognized that if men don't have status, they get deselected from romance. They get excluded, he says, from social circles, and they get looked down upon by society. And this is true. Like I said before, you drive a dump truck. Like, a lot of women would look at that and say, "Oh, this guy drives a dump truck." And the next thing, the fact that he makes a killing in construction work wouldn't impress them. The fact that he comes home smelling like he makes a lot of money in construction would be off-putting, right? Unless they're, good down-to-earth gals, they will look down on him. If he drove a garbage truck, that would have been even worse, right? Which, if you ever really look at a garbage truck and all of the controls that are in it, and all of the things that the guy has to account for when going through town, down streets that have cars parked on both sides and turning corners where people have parked illegally too close to the corner and shit like that, trying not to hit anything and damage anything. It takes a pretty decent driver to drive a dump truck or a garbage truck or any big piece of equipment like that. If somebody has to bring a backhoe into your neighborhood, it's going to come on a little flatbed, and that guy has to drive that truck down a residential street. Right? These are things that, unless it's a really big backhoe, and then they got to drive it down the street, and that's even harder sometimes, because it's not really made for that. It's made to sit in one place and dig. So, but women will turn around and they'll look down on these guys. Right? They'll look at him and be like, "Oh, you got dirty hands. I don't want to go out with a guy with dirty hands." Right? Some of the guys with dirty hands are the best guys to talk to. But go ahead and leave those guys for the women who know. Just need more women who know. So she goes on. Alex doesn't have status. He's been out of work for a while, lives in a council house on benefits, hasn't had a girlfriend in many years. We did read this part before. Doesn't define himself as an incel. He claims to have moved past the sexual desperation of his youth. His views sound pretty similar to one. So she's basing this on her definition of what an incel is. But if he's not trying to be in a relationship anymore, does he qualify as an incel?
He qualifies as a full cell.
So voluntary celibate, not an involuntary celibate.
Nope.
Which would be the polar opposite of voluntary.
Because that's where most guys are at now. So most guys that are in the late 30s to 40s, late 30s, early 40s have kind of accepted they're not going to be in a relationship. So so in the 20s and 30s they're considered incels, but in the late 30s, early 40s they're considered full cells.
Because at that point they've figured that it's not going to happen and they've accepted it.
Yeah, because they've aged out of the dating market.
Yeah, that makes sense. And then she made fun of his perfectly normal habits. playing video games. Oh no, he plays video games. Sometimes he stays up late at night playing video games. I've never done that. About 1,000 times. I've never almost been late for work because I slept through my alarm because I stayed up late playing video games. Yeah. No, it's wrong when this guy does it. Posts about men's rights. Oh no, on his ex account. Oh no. And he reports feminists for transphobia. I forgot about that. You really can't get them banned now for that though. But yeah, this is discussing the marriage issues, right? The stuff that we talk about men when they get into a marriage, discovering that if they have a reason why they need to get out, they're in trouble. And if she has a reason why she wants to get out, they're in trouble. So now we looked at MGTOW before also. So she has called him an incel, right? Then she says he's a MGTOW. So she doesn't really understand what an incel is and what a MGTOW is, because you really can't be both. I'm going to interrupt this. Oh, go ahead.
They always try to conflate the two, but they're not the same.
They want to lump us all in as one big group. They'll throw men's rights activists in between incels and MGTOW with the idea that if they can demonize incels enough, and then they can demonize MGTOW, and then they mention us along with the incels and the MGTOW, that would be enough. Like, oh, people will hate MRAs now because we mentioned them after we poison the water with these mentions of incels and MGTOW based on our description of them. And it doesn't matter that it's inaccurate, and anybody that looks for 5 minutes into actual forums where incels or MGTOW talk about things the way that they would frame them, you could easily find out just from doing that everything she's saying is bullshit. Doesn't matter though. They will do this over and over again because they think that will stop people who advocate for equally shared parenting, fair treatment for boys in school, due process rights, equal treatment under the law, equal treatment in the workplace, not benefits just for women all the time. But skipping a lot of this because we already did look at it. I think we actually read Costello's statement too, because this is where we read about 30% of incels meeting the clinical requirements for being referred for an autism assessment, indicating a much higher rate of autism than in the general population. So basically, what she's doing here, after finding this out, she still wrote this article this way. She's taking these guys who have a clinical disability. It is considered to be a disability. If it's bad enough, if your ways of being different from the rest of the world socially distance you enough from the rest of the population because of your autism, you actually can be legally disabled and collect disability. Like
that's where I'm at now.
Yeah. Yep. And you don't have to have any other, no physical disability. You don't have to have a low IQ. I work with people with intellectual disabilities. And if you are distant enough from the rest of the population socially that you cannot effectively navigate a workplace culture and you can't retain a job because of that, that's enough. Like, you don't have to be, people try to equate autism with mental retardation or developmental delay, developmental disabilities, things like
I have
that.
all of that.
Yeah. Well, in any case, they try to equate them as all being one thing, and they're not. Like, each thing is separate, and each thing, you can pile them onto a person, but I think a lot of people with autism, just from the side of a person who is observing from the sidelines and understanding what the communication difficulties are from the inside. I'm at the opposite end of the IQ spectrum. I've actually had at least one shrink tell me that he didn't have a number on his chart for how high my IQ is. And at the time, I thought, oh, this is going to serve me well. It doesn't do jack shit for you. Like, what it does most of the time is get you in trouble. Because I'll figure things out at work, and other people will get mad at me for coming up with a creative solution to a persistent problem because they weren't the ones that thought of it. And that's happened at every job I've ever worked at. Doesn't matter where I am, whether it's a high IQ job or what people would refer to as a shit job. Everybody does this. They get mad at you for solving problems. And that's sort of my thing, right? I go in there and I solve problems. So it gets me in trouble a lot. But I watch, at the same time, I watch people that I've worked with that have difficulty just even communicating with other people. Someone who can't tell you they have a toothache because they don't know how to describe it, or they don't know how to talk to you. Like, they can approach you and be there close to you and look at you and point to their tooth, but they just don't know how to steel themselves and work up the gumption or energy to speak words to you, even though they can, right? And I don't think everybody always understands those difficulties, even when they're at the top echelons of the profession. And so sometimes people get diagnosed with much lower IQ than they actually have. And then when we go to work with them and we're told, this individual has all these sets of problems and their intellect is at this level, and here's what they're going to understand and not understand. And then you go to do things to help them and work with them, and you discover that actually they understand a lot more than you were told. And actually they're quite capable of handling a lot more. And if they don't like the rules they live under, they're quite capable of skirting them a lot more easily than they've been given credit for. And so you end up having to get a lot more creative with being able to explain to somebody, well, here's why this rule exists. Here's what we can do instead, things like that. Because IQ is kind of bullshit in a lot of ways.
Well, it's not that IQ is bullshit.
It is. They give you a test, and you get a number, and that number is supposed to define your intelligence, but it doesn't.
We are assigned emotional intelligence, as though it relates to intelligence quotient in some way, and that's just this way of telling people that women have this intelligence that that men don't. And yeah, if you fuck around with the definitions of things enough, then yeah. women are narcissists and men are autists, and you know, you could sway that into what you call emotional intelligence and intellectual intelligence. But once you unpack that, you notice that intellectual intelligence is a tautology of some description. And yeah, and women can decipher other people's emotions. But men can decipher other people's intelligence. Yeah. And when you extend this, you get the notion of autism and narcissism, and that women are more narcissistic and men are more autistic. And yes, that is very much the case, as has been ascertained. And it's difficult to derive these things, especially under a society under which we live, where it doesn't matter how narcissistic a woman gets, it's never considered abnormal. But when a man or a boy shows even the first sign of autism, is considered abnormal. And you know, hop, skip, and the jump. Here we are. even a girl who looks even remotely autistic is automatically called a boy, and a boy who expresses narcissism is considered a girl. And it's difficult to even argue with any of this without being called a fucking racist or some shit. Because this gender bullshit has been tied in with this race bullshit. And now we're sort of sat here going, well, maybe there's no difference between a man and a woman, but no, there's a difference between a man and between a boy and a girl. And it can be noticed from like the earliest possible point in your life. Like, boys like clocks and girls like toys, Barbie dolls, that sort of thing. And it's difficult not to notice that, and it's difficult not to apply these obvious differences between boys and girls. Like, boys like clocks and girls like dolls.
There's a song in that somewhere.
There's a song about that?
No, what Mike said. There might be a song in that. What Mike just said.
Yeah.
I'll figure something out.
Yeah.
Don't worry.
But what's really funny is, like, as you're saying that, I'm sitting here looking at my oldest favorite childhood toy. Like, it sounds like happiness to me. And I don't care to look at it. It has a face on it. But it's called a Happy Apple. And inside are little bells that make a chime if you roll the apple. It was from my infancy. And every toy I had after that one was a puzzle. Every favorite toy I had after that was a puzzle. I didn't like most dolls. Didn't like most of the stuff that girls got into, except clothes and books. And really, the clothes were because of the books. But puzzles, like, you can lose yourself in a puzzle and play around with it till you solve it, and then take it apart and solve it again from a different angle, and it's intensely fun. And I don't know. This idea that you can go down the middle, boys like some things and girls like other things. I think one of the reasons people get confused about gender and gender issues is because we have this idea that it's all in people's how people look and how people act, and not ingrained. It's not part of your biology. Well, it is part of your biology. Girls are girls biologically, and there are impulses that'll come from their biology. So I didn't play with dolls very much. I had them. My mom bought me dolls, and I kept them on my bed during the day, and got obsessive over them. And like whenever I was leaving the house, I had one doll that looked like she was a bigger, older girl than all the other dolls, and she had to babysit. Even though I didn't do anything with my dolls when I was there, they still had to have a babysitter. And that's about the extent of my... Unless you're talking Barbies, because I could sew clothes for my Barbies. But... And they usually look like something out of Mad Max. Thunderdome, Beyond Thunderdome. They were terrible. But I played with my brother's toys. And his friends. Like, we played guns, we beat each other with sticks, we didn't box, they boxed. I took pictures. Right? Because you can't put a girl in the boxing ring with a boy. Not without 6 other boys beating you up for it. But yeah. It's different from different people. And I think a lot of this stuff, when they make assessments, it's... You have to recognize that there's a lot of leeway with what people are assessed to be and how people are assessed to be, because you can tell people a lot of things medically and then discover that they've far surpassed your expectations. I was supposed to not make it to 21 years old, and I'm 53. I'll be 54 in July. So doctors can be right about a lot of things, but sometimes they miss the signs of an impending success. In any case, on the internet, they can talk about their problems with people, and who will listen and tell them who to blame. So this I think we read earlier in one of her other statements. On the internet, they, being incels, can talk about their problems with people who will listen and tell them who to blame. The stupid thing about this is we actually had a rule made at some point on the men's rights subreddit that you don't post women behaving badly posts unless you have a purpose beside, look, here's a woman behaving badly. We got to the point where, yes, everybody knows bad behavior happens with both sexes. It's not just men. Women do it too. But, you want to talk about a different attitude in the justice system, or this individual was harmed by this woman behaving badly and there's a fundraiser, or here's a brand new way that we haven't seen anybody talking about that women behaving badly has affected someone. And a lot of times you'll get guys come in and talk about their situation. I'm getting divorced. She's leaving. She already took the kids and went to her mother's house, and she sent me the paperwork, and she has started draining our bank accounts. What do I do? And of course, the first advice men get there is get a lawyer, because you can't do this without one. And then men will also talk to them about, I went through this, here's what happened to me, here's what I did wrong, don't do these things, here's what worked for me, these are okay to try. A lot of them, the thing that got me really involved in the men's rights subreddit when I first started getting involved was the 7 years in hell case that I keep referring to. I had a buddy whose ex-wife, by the way, back to Jerry Springer, had a baby by another guy. And, of course, that spelled the end of their marriage. He divorced her, and they got 50-50 shared parenting. They arranged that. It wasn't the default, but it was the divorce that he said, this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this up. And, if you don't sign it, then I'll take you to court for it. So that's what she signed. But she goes on with, husband number 2. Well, they weren't married. Baby daddy number 2. And moves in with him. And long story short, because there is a long story to go with this, baby daddy number 2 beat the child black and blue, and the child's father got custody, full protective custody. The mother only had supervised visitation, and it was very limited, and she got mad. So she started a series, 7 years worth, of false allegations ranging from rape and violent assault to one time a drive-by greeting that never happened. Like, none of the things that she said about him were true. And for 7 years, he fought this. At close to the end of it, he filed a complaint for vexatious litigation. And it took another year for that to go through the courts. And then she got to appeal. And at the end of it, her appeal was rejected. And so she is no longer allowed to do anything to him. She can't call the cops on him. She can't file complaints. And she can't file any kind of court action in regard to him at all. And that was pretty much the end. That's all she could do. Like, the last little, what's it called at the end of the story when you add something on, was that she wrote him an email, and she was mad at him about something, and she goes through this paragraphs and paragraphs of, bitch, 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 moan, 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 yada, 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 yell, 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 whine a lot. And in the middle of it is just the word tomato. Bitch, 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 whine, 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 moan, 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 tomato. Bitchity, bitch, 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 whine, 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 moan, moan, moan. And she finished it with, was it like yours truly or love always or some bullshit like that you would sign off from a friend? And he's like, is this an automatic email signature? Because I don't think she ever said that to me in her life. And that's all she could do. Epilogue. Thank you, Meredith. It was my brain was going somewhere else, and I knew it wasn't the right word. But that's all she could do was she harangued him in a letter, and in the middle of it, there was just this superfluous tomato that made no sense. So what she ended up doing, no matter how angry her letter sounded, because she put the word tomato in the middle of it by accident, he just couldn't stop laughing at the letter. So in the end, all she could do was make him laugh. So when I got involved, I had written a 4-page post on a blogger blog, Google blog, about how to handle vexatious litigation and malicious prosecution and restraining order abuse in a divorce setting where the woman is making false allegations of intimate partner and sexual violence as a method of obtaining custody of a child. And a lot of people get referred still today to those posts. So, like, that's where we are in the movement. Telling people who to blame doesn't do you any good. Nobody cares who to blame. When a guy comes to the men's rights subreddit, he wants to know how to not lose contact with his children, how to not end up homeless, how to not have to work himself to death to support 2 households, and how to not lose his mind. Those are the important things. But a woman like this doesn't know how to be sympathy to that. Or doesn't know how to be sympathetic to that. And this paragraph, what Costello says here is spot on. Some might say it's easy for women who often face unwanted sexual advances and harassment to dismiss men's complaints about constant sexual rejection. We don't do well to recognize how painful this sexual invisibleness feels, Costello said. And when men in particular are in that poor mental health, they externalize their aggression, but we find that incels have an awful lot of toxic self-image too. So in other words, they're internalizing it, right? So they have a lot of hate toward themselves. Loneliness is a hell of a drug. So at least she didn't make fun of Costello. I suppose she can't because he's just like a psychologist.
And he's not ugly as well. So
that's true. That's true. Some academic studies have indicated that men who are deemed to be of what Costello calls low mate value are more likely to become hostile toward women. Well, there's a reason for that, right? If you get kicked every time you meet a particular type of person, how are you going to feel about them?
There's so many times you can kick a puppy.
Yeah. Yep. Till he grows up to become the dog that bites. And something that people don't understand. Again, like, you might think of somebody as invisible or not think of somebody at all. Right? You might put effort into ignoring them. You might avoid them. You might, look at them like they're dirt under your feet. You're thinking about how you feel in the moment when you do that. When you avoid somebody you don't want to be around because they're annoying, or they smell bad, or they don't speak well, and you don't understand what they're saying, and you have difficulty communicating with them, and you don't feel good about that difficulty. Right? Like, I have difficulty understanding accents, and I ask people to repeat themselves a lot. I just tell people, it's not your fault, it's me. I'm not very good about this. This is one of the things I fail at. Right? So I always have to ask people to repeat themselves. It's just a thing. But it's not because you're not clear. It's because I'm not good at differentiating.
Well, what you're saying about the apples and strife, I'm talking about the troubles and strife. What is it you're saying about what is it that I'm saying?
Your accent's one of the easiest ones. When I was in high school and I went to shrink because of the roid rage, he was Korean, and I had a terrible time with his accent. And he really gave me what for not telling him. He was like, how am I supposed to help you if you won't admit to me when you don't understand what I'm saying? And that got me over that embarrassment. Now I just ask people to repeat themselves. I'm sorry, I didn't understand that. It's my fault. But can you repeat it anyway? And that's all it takes most of the time. People don't get upset with me for not being good at understanding. I have a terrible time. Let's see. Who in the men's rights movement is very, very difficult for me to understand? Count Dankula. I have a terrible time with his accent.
You say that now, but how the fuck was supposed to go you didn't with that? You that now the fucking first place in the you bastard, yeah.
Yeah.
Some academic studies.
Yeah. Yep. Some academic studies have indicated that men who are deemed to be of what Costello calls low mate value are more likely to become hostile toward women. And of course, they will deem anything hostile. But, and consequently, women tend to not like misogynists, so you become lower mate value, then more misogynist, then lower mate value, then more misogynist. It's the cycle.
This is a lie.
Yeah.
Yeah, women love misogynists. I mean, when you actually break it down, like a man who actually challenges a woman is the hottest thing a woman could possibly find. That's what women. That's what women want. Women want a man who challenges them, and guess what? A man wants a woman who challenges him. within reason. Like, as long as the fucking government doesn't get involved and turns it into a one-way street. Like, men and women love women and men who challenge each other. Like, that was all we ever needed. And it worked for the longest time. Like, because we've always had these jokes about how men and women are different. And we've always been able to handle these jokes about how men and women are really fucking different. But they love each other. And that's...
It used to be a segment in Mad Magazine, actually. Men versus women. I don't remember what it was called now.
It's been a segment in, like, ancient comedy.
Oh,
like,
yeah, forever.
We're talking Roman, ancient Greek comedy. Was when people... Well, I say that was when they first discovered this comedy angle that men and women are different. But I get the distinct feeling that for as long as men and women have even noticed the difference between men and women, they've had these angles of comedy where they notice that men and women are different. It's not even ancient Romans and ancient Greeks. It's ancient everything. It's beyond ancient.
Back when language was still developing, probably.
Exactly.
Yep.
Like it's in everyone's best interest that we notice the difference between men and women, and how fun the difference between men and women is. Like, it's never been a problem until some fuckers made it a problem. Like, in the last couple of centuries. Like, yes, men and women are different. What is wrong with that? Why would it ever have been a bad thing that men and women are a little bit different? Of course they are. Why wouldn't they be a little bit different? Like, it's never been a problem, let alone a political problem, that men and women are a little bit different. Like, for fuck's sake.
Yeah.
God.
It's interesting. And when it comes down to the whole women tend to not like misogynist thing, that's not the truth about women. It's not that women dislike misogynists, right? Women dislike having their authority bucked, and they dislike, even though women don't have authority per se, but especially having their moral authority or their sexual authority, like be bucked. That really bothers them. Women don't like being told no. Women don't like no. Women don't like men who are that they would think of as beneath them in a way that isn't tough and exotic, but just beneath them, like dirt under their feet. And they'll call you a misogynist for being in that position, even if you've done nothing and said nothing misogynistic. So even the guy that, just works down the hall in an office building, who happens to be very unattractive, is on a lower pay scale than they are for whatever reason, and maybe isn't good at making the best of what he has when it comes to his looks and his intelligence and stuff. I mean, there's nothing exotic or exciting about him. He's just somebody that woman would consider beneath him. And all he has to do to be considered a misogynist is to not get out of her way when she's walking down the hallway. And maybe 10 other guys didn't get out of her way, but that guy was clearly in her way just to make her move. Right? So it's not that women get upset about misogyny. It's that women attribute misogyny to things that upset them. And there's a big difference between being upset by misogyny and attributing misogyny to that which has upset you. And by the way, when I say that which has upset you, a lot of times with women, being upset is a decision as well. But I can give you a dumb example of that. I sleep in the middle of the day when I work nights. I haven't been working nights for a while, but normally when I work nights, and normally I do, I go home from work, get home mid-morning, and I sleep until my husband gets home from work in the evening. And when that happens, I want quiet, right? And I'll get annoyed at noises like lawnmowers and people with loud music in their cars and stuff like that. It's not a high level of annoyance, but it's annoyance. But I can't bring myself to be annoyed at the sound of kids playing outside. It's too happy of a thing, right? And I can't be arsed to get too annoyed at any of the other things, because just because I work at night doesn't mean the rest of the world stops, right? So people are going to mow their lawn, and people are going to drive their cars, and some of them are going to keep their music up too loud. And it's been that way forever, and it's going to be that way forever. So I decided early on as a night worker that I'm not going to get upset about this. And so I don't, really. That's a decision. That's all it takes for most of the time. If I do get super annoyed by it, I'll get a noisemaker. Something that'll keep the noise from drawing my attention, right? But I don't want to do that because then I can't hear the kids playing outside, and that's a happy noise. So you pick your battles. But I think a lot of women would care in this situation. Not our Karen, but retail establishment Karen. Somebody's got to speak to the manager. That's what you end up with most of the time. And that is women making decisions to be mad, stay mad, hold on to that mad, and then act on it. The CCE study also found that incels are likely to have extremely poor mental health. We did read this before. Because he starts talking about the victim orientation. No one cares about my pain. Why should I care about yours? But see, this is a half fact. From the people that I have met who are incels, I haven't met an incel that doesn't suffer from depression. Hello. Right? But you're not the only one, Richard. Almost everybody that I've met that said he's an incel has been depressed, has had clinical depression at least at some point. So I don't think it's a victim orientation. I think it's a sense of hopelessness.
I mean, there are people who identify as incels for various different reasons. Like, your boy Richard right here, ladies and gentlemen, identifies as an incel. And I keep telling him he doesn't need to do that. But he keeps doing it. For whatever reason or another. But I remain here to remind the general public that there's no need to identify as an incel, because it's just an identity. There's been such a thing as a female celibate, right? Just celibate. Just a woman who doesn't want to have sex. That's been a thing for a long time, and it was just called celibate. But recently there's been this phenomenon of the male celibate, and it's just been generally assumed that the male celibate must be an involuntarily celibate, because, why on earth would a man not want to have sex with a woman? It's simply unfeasible and incalculable that a man would not want to have sex with a woman, or that a man would want to have sex with a woman, but he isn't. And
You mean aside from the many people who are voluntarily celibate for religious reasons and such?
Yeah, I think that is the difference. There are a lot of men who are voluntarily celibate, but they're kind of lumped in with the men who love women and really want to have sex with women, but are unable to. And it's I don't know if I've expressed this recently, but incel just means a man who likes women, but women do not like him. And this uncovers an awful lot when you listen to these feminist influencers who just call everyone they don't like an incel, because an incel is just a man who loves women but is not loved back. And that is what it means. Because a voluntary celibate man is someone who chooses not to indulge in relationships. But an involuntarily celibate man is a man who wants to indulge in relationships with women, but for whatever reason is not able to indulge in such relationships. So an incel is just a man who loves women, but whom women do not love.
You know, there's something you touched on there that I don't know if you realized it, but historically, joining a monastery or joining the priesthood was sort of a position of respect, right? You would be somebody just by virtue of the cloth that you were associated with, whether it was the priesthood or being a monk, whether it was the Christian monks, the Buddhist monks, any other religion where there's been a type of clergy or a type of philosopher who was celibate and lived only with men and had strict rules that he followed. A lot of times there were strict dietary rules involved and things like that. But he was also seen to be a highly spiritual man, someone who you could go to for advice, someone who you would trust, right? A very trusted person. And in some cultures, the individual might also be a highly skilled fighter, even if he wasn't actually going to engage in violence out of choice. But, so if somebody years ago found himself in a position of having no relationship prospects because maybe he was never going to make it financially and he didn't have the looks, he didn't have an opportunity to raise his status, he could go into that lifestyle and raise his status that way, as long as he just had the discipline to do that. If he decided, to pretty much just accept, like, all right, that's it. I know that I'm going to be a virgin for the rest of my life. I will never, ever have sex. I will never get married. I will never have children. I'm going to be okay with that because it's a lot easier to live with something that you're okay with than it is to live with something that you're not okay with. And this isn't going away, right? Makes that decision, making that decision, going into a profession that offers prestige and a trusted position in the community for being completely celibate, in addition to whatever other strict code you have, gave men a way out of the situation of just being despondent about it. But that's not the case today, right? You say you want to be a priest today, people will think because a small percentage of members of the church, members of the clergy, have engaged in horrible crimes that you're now going into a den of iniquity if you're going to be a priest. And the priesthood is going to have to redeem itself. And in the meantime, somebody who just knows he's going to be celibate forever anyway can't look at that and say, well, I could at least be considered a respectable member of the community if I do this. And I can be dedicated to this and be well versed in it and be of benefit to other people. And I will have a social circle, the people that will come to me for advice and people that come, to confess and be given absolution and, all the many things that a priest does. I will help people get married. I will christen babies and so on. But now
the equivalent of it is a nun, and
Yeah.
there are very few nuns, but there
Yeah.
are a great deal of women who are like, no, I will not pertain to the nuclear family. I will not. I will not. Yes. Yeah.
Well, the
yeah,
thing about women is most of them don't have this, the same likelihood of an epiphany of there is not a snowball's chance in hell that I'm ever going to lose my virginity, right? There aren't very many women out there that couldn't if they wanted to. There aren't very many women out there that couldn't find somebody who will at least fuck them, if not date them. And honestly, there's a lot of women, even now, when most women are fat and bitchy. I'm sorry, but that's true.
Yeah,
most women are Karens. Like most women are fat and bitchy. And again, not like our Karen. But they still will find people who will fuck them and marry them, and not even necessarily in that order. Right? They can even find people who will wait until after they're married to fuck them. And I've photographed the weddings. So it's really not the same. But men used to have the priesthoods. They used to have going into the woods to be a hermit without being disturbed by other people. And you just live your life and you enjoy solitude. And you go into town when you need something. And you build a male friend group in the community from people you trade with. Right? There was that for men. There organizations that men had, clubs, workers' organizations, guilds, things like that, where it was mostly or only men, and it didn't matter if you were unattractive. Didn't matter if you were not well heeled, unless it was a wealthy man's club. Right? But most organizations, you just had to have one thing in common to be part of that organization. And it would be, the thing that the organization was centered around. If you were a carpenter, other carpenters didn't care if you were butt ugly. They cared if you knew, the trade and you did it well. And, that was it. And a lot of organizations that were male only or mostly men disappeared. There even used to be a thing clear up into the 60s, at least the 1960s in the US, stag bars. I bet anybody younger than a Gen Xer who hasn't heard me talk about this before doesn't know what a stag bar is. But you could probably guess based on the name. Those were not welcome, right? It was just men. And a lot of times, like there was one in the university community that where I went to university when my dad was in school there. And occasionally he would go in there. It was mostly, for a long time, it was a dry community. But when they had opened it up and allowed bars in, that place, had cheap beer and cheeseburgers and stuff like that. And one bathroom, and the bathroom didn't have a door because it was male only, so they really didn't give a fuck. And Dad was telling me the story one time about 3 ladies that came in there from the university, 3 co-eds that were being all feminist about it too. We're in here, you can't kick us out. Okay, and every guy in there, all right, whatever, go ahead, order a beer. They sat up at the bar being all proud of themselves for invading the stag bar until one of them had to pee. And they told her where the bathroom was, and she goes down the hallway. And from down the hallway comes there's no door! Where's the door? And the bartender's going, we don't need a door. This is a stag bar. There's only men in here. Why do we need a door? And so the women left. That was it. They could handle everything else, but the no-door bathroom was too much.
Come back again?
Nope. Not once. That was back when there used to be a type of beer sold in the U.S. called low beer. So low beer was to American beer what American beer is to Europeans. Your normal beer might be 6% alcohol to 12 if it's really, really good beer. But low beer was 3.2%. It was called 3.2 beer. 3.2% alcohol. So it would take fucking forever to get drunk if that was your goal and you were drinking low beer. You really had to chug a lot of it, right? And you could buy low beer when you were 18, and you could buy real beer when you were 21. And so the college guys would go to the stag bar and drink nickel low beers all night, and then go back to the dorms and sleep it off. But yeah, those gals, they really showed them. They went into the stag bar. But what would happen in a lot of places, bigger places, is they would sue because somebody would tell them to leave. And then they'd get the right to go in there. Once they had a right to be there, they would say, well, you guys just don't have a door in the bathroom because you want to make us leave. You got to put a door up. And it go downhill from there.
Why do women ruin everything?
Why did they what?
Why did they ruin everything?
It's because their sensibilities are different. Even though men are better at smelling bad smells, women are more offended by them. Even though men are better at noticing ugly colors, women are more offended by them. Right? Women are the ones who decide what's in bad taste. And a lot of times I think it's because men are better at tolerating differences in appearance and differences in
and differences in smells.
Differences
men don't like the smell of fish, but they're willing to put up with it. And women don't like the smell of bleach, but they'll find other ways to complain about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yep. Yeah, the only time I've ever heard a guy really complain about a normal smell at work was because he was allergic to it. He was allergic to coffee, and it made him sick. So needless to say, I did not have coffee when he was at work. I just, I'm not doing that to somebody. I'm allergic to a lot of things too. But in any case, yeah, that's why, men will be perfectly happy if they've got a place that they're gathering, and the point of going there is to sit and talk and drink beer and eat pretzels and potato chips and cheeseburgers and fries and stuff. They won't care if there's fancy artwork or not. If there is, that's nice. If there's not, that's okay. Right? Unless they really want a particular atmosphere and they're seeking a particular theme and talking about particular themed things. It's just a place to go and hang out. And what matters more is who's there and what kind of people they are and how much fun they are to be around and the price and quality of the beer. And sometimes the price matters a lot more than the quality. But women can't do that. It has to have other things that are appealing. Like, this is why you didn't see, like, you saw all kinds of stag bars, but there weren't dough bars. Right? And, you had gentlemen's clubs, but it was, I think, the 20th century before you had the female equivalent. You had...
What they did is they turned it into ladies.
They did what, Lauren?
Turned it into ladies' night.
Yeah, turn it into ladies' night.
Yeah.
Yep. You'd have, I don't know, women-only spaces versus men-only spaces. Like, you might see other types of places that are functional that would be women-only spaces, and other types of places that were functional that would be men-only spaces. But women didn't... There weren't bars that were just for women unless they were for lesbians.
Mm-hmm.
And there weren't... Women didn't really have their equivalent, necessarily, of the eagles and the elks and the I don't know... like, it depending on whether you're in a meeting hall or a bar, you can go from... Royal Order Water Buffalo to Royal Order Hairy Buffalo, right? But women didn't have all that. They had quilting bees. And the ladies' societies would be things like the women's auxiliary of such and such. And it would be something to do with feeding the poor or cleaning up the streets or, it wasn't the same. And so women always have to be busybodies. They always have to be changing their environment. They always have to be rearranging the furniture, putting up curtains. It has to have a new paint job. If the floor looks dirty, you need to fix it, or you need to get a new floor. That's why. That's why they were. And you have to be genteel in the way that you speak.
Prove it.
Yeah, prove it. But women's sensibilities, if you're too loud, if you're obnoxious, if your humor's too sexual, God forbid you tell rape jokes. Right? You can't make fun of rapists for being a little bit weird. But yeah, that's why they run everything. You get a perfectly good environment that suits the purpose you're using it for. When you bring women into it, that's not good enough. There must be something more. So, we read about Costello saying that incels are a self-defeating group, lonely men that drag each other down and are misogynistic. And I think we disagreed with that on several levels as well. No, I don't think you are either. I think a lot of people attribute misogyny to realism. If you criticize a behavior and that behavior is common to women, people call it misogynistic because you're criticizing women. But it's okay to criticize a behavior if it's common to men, right? And it's not misandric to criticize that behavior because...
It's common practice too.
Yeah. and because of reasons. And the most stark example of that, I think, is I'll have feminists on X, like tell me all men are rapists, and that's all that they are. Like the line the rad fem says in the women's room. But the minute that you point out that there are female rapists, well, you're bashing women.
I wanted to meet someone who was in the process of being dragged down.
Yeah, that's difficult.
So she found somebody else to talk to.
You found someone else to talk to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So she found somebody that was 18. Yeah, the article.
Yeah. So I think this is about actually where we left off before, too. Wanted to meet someone who's in the process of being dragged down into the manosphere. Found Dan 18, who seemed to spend a lot of his time posting on Reddit about men's rights. Notice she didn't say posting in the men's rights subreddit.
I love the phrasing of being dragged down
into the manosphere. Yeah. That demonstrates that we're low.
Right. Right. Like, no, maybe we just look at the world from a different view than you do. It doesn't necessarily, again, this is putting her above the rest of the male society. Like, what do you think you are? Who do you think you are that men don't deserve to have an opinion about anything?
Yeah.
I will kill you all.
See, what is this publication again? Hold on.
In Minecraft.
In Minecraft. Yeah, dragged down. But you write for Prospect. I've never heard of Prospect until I found this article.
I mean, just imagine a man saying that, dragged down into this,
into the femisphere.
Right. They would all be up in arms.
Let's see, if we were to construct the idea of a femisphere, just based on the way feminists construct their idea of the manosphere, if we were to construct the idea of a femisphere, obviously feminists and rad femmes would be included. They would have to be front and center, even the nice feminists, right? Mm-hmm. But you'd also have to include the closest feminist equivalent of pickup artists, which I think would be the female dating strategists. And I believe that has existed for as long as male pickup artistry has existed, by the way. You'd have to include...
It dates back to the 60s, right?
Yeah.
If not way beyond. This is how you manipulate men into giving up their lives for you. Isn't it? Isn't that what that is? And I'm sorry that that's not just a century old. That's a fucking millennium old.
Mm.
Women have been doing that for a really fucking long time.
Mm-hmm.
What's interesting is that the difference between the big difference that I note, at least, between pickup artists and female dating strategists is that while pickup artists can have exploitative attitudes, they are nowhere near the level of exploitative bullshit that you see coming out of the female dating strategy, like subreddit and all that. Now, we don't have access to that anymore because you have to be one of them to get in now. As soon as people started talking about them, they went dark. Like, oh no, people know that we exist. Turn off that light. Yeah, they're pretty toxic. They're really fucking toxic. Everything for them is about status. Right? It's not about whether or not they're finding somebody to get laid with or whether or not they're finding somebody to get married. None of that. It's they talk about high value and low value the same way that that pickup artists talk about whether someone is high status or low status and more or less dateable as a result. So their entire take on things really is that, you know, their definition of a high value man, like we went through and read about that previously, where it's status, but it's not just status. He also has to be completely pussy whipped. Like, absolutely. She's got to be the queen of his world, and he has to be the only subject. And has to be servant, not, fellow royal.
And the idea of a toxic female is not sufficiently got across with the idea of toxicity. Because it's neither a poison nor a venom. Because, as you may know, a venom is something bitten into its target by the animal in question, and poison is something that, if you bite into something and it's toxic, that's poison. If something bites into you and it's toxic, that is venom. And that's these are two whole different areas when it comes to women.
Yeah.
And it's not moved along by chemicals. It's moved along by the government, because women are not chemically toxic to men, but they are afforded a toxicity by the government.
Not anymore, because the government took away all the ABT.
Yeah.
In a way, yeah. When you look into specific species, like the duck-billed platypus, the male has a uniquely venomous spur on its feet. The duck-billed platypus is one of these few species in which the male is uniquely toxic, and there are all kinds of species where the female is uniquely toxic, like spiders, or all manner of arachnids and insects and whatnot, where it's the female is the big bad boss, and the male is just this diminutive thing that hangs,
just like ants and bees.
Yeah, and it's this is something that I blew Alison's mind with like 10 years ago. Like, isn't it weird how the male is the largest of the species in so many mammals, but the female is the largest of the species in so many insects? And I was like, isn't it weird how isn't it weird how different that is? That there's this relative largeness, and that in mammals, it's the male who's the biggest, but in insects, it's the female who's the biggest. But once you unpack what biggest means, like, is it really any that different when you consider that there is a queen bee, a queen ant, and therefore the female is the largest of the species, the most central of the species. But then when you look at mammals, the male is the biggest. But is it? is it actually? Because the male is just out here to do the drone shit. Whereas the woman is out here to just sit there getting fat and being the center of the hive. And yeah, it's different between mammals and insects and stuff, but at the same time, it's like, yeah, no, it's not weird that the female anglerfish is 100 times bigger than the male anglerfish, because the female human is 100 times bigger than the male human. Not physically. Not physically. But in a different way. The female human is 100 times bigger than the male human.
Socially.
In a different way. Socially.
Yeah.
In all manner of different things. Where, I mean, you'll have noticed that if something bad happens to a female human, people give 100 times more of a shit than if a bad thing happens to a male human. It's so, in a way, it's the same.
They mentioned
Go on.
They mentioned the boogeyman in one of the paragraphs.
Yeah, I will build on what Doc said though on one thing, because it's something that I've noticed, and I think it's part of the reason why women who are socially awkward have an easier time in groups of men than in groups of women. Women have the in-group bias, and they have it in two different ways. Like they have the sisterhood in-group bias, but they also have the my clique in-group bias. And the my clique in-group bias trumps the sisterhood. If you're not part of her clique and you don't look like her clique, you are not in the sisterhood. You're not in her sisterhood. But if a guy can find common ground with you, if he can find any common ground with you, and you're not being an asshole to him, he's your friend. Right? He has to have a reason to treat you like shit before he will treat you like shit. Unless there's something abnormal among men about that guy. Whereas if a woman doesn't have a reason to not treat you like shit, it's pretty normal for her to do so. Just saying. Let's see. Dan is concerned that there's no healthy positive masculinity anymore. It's feminist fault, he tells me. They've torn down the traditional ideals of manhood, holding doors, being a gentleman, and left a space for new role models who might be worse. And now they're freaking the fuck out about that. Like, they didn't just tear down doors, holding doors and being a gentleman. What they tore down was it's recognized that if life dumps a huge pile of shit in the middle of your neighborhood, what women will mostly do is yell for help. And what men will mostly be expected to do is grab a shovel and get that shit out of their neighborhood. And after they're done, they won't be thanked for it. They'll be told to take a shower because they stink. Right? That is the way of things, right? So it used to be that once those men got all that shit out of the neighborhood, they would be thanked for it. They would be offered a place to go get cleaned up comfortably that was probably made hospitable by the women. And then they would be offered a nice hot meal in response. And that is even if they didn't get paid for it. But they were at least recognized for their service to the community, that they got the shit out of their neighborhood, that life had dumped into the middle of it. Today, they're criticized if they don't shovel it. They're criticized if they do shovel it. The way they shovel it will be criticized. The time it takes them to shovel it will be criticized. What they do with it to dispose of it will be criticized, no matter what it is or whether they've listened to women's advice. It'll still be criticized, and they might even be fined for it. And then if they want to rest afterwards, they'll be criticized for that. If they want people to recognize that the reason there's no shit in the neighborhood now is that they got rid of it, they're being arrogant and needy and demanding. But if the women take credit, which some women will, then clearly it wasn't the guys that did any of that. It was the women. So what are they even crowing about anyway? And of course, they will be told to take a shower because they stink. But it won't be recognized that it was because they performed a service. Nobody will do anything to make the shower comfortable. They'll probably have cold water and a tent instead of a building. And there will be no meal afterward unless they make it themselves. And then they'd better share it with the women or they're being assholes. Right? That's the difference. All of the recognition, when women want recognition when they do good things, even just not being such a shitty mother that after you have put your child in a single parent household situation, you don't also neglect the child. Like, women want recognition for that. And they want recognition for that on fucking Father's Day. But if men do great things and they just don't want to be shit on for doing them, and even if they don't say, well, look, we built the tallest building that ever existed, thank us for it. Just, look, we built a hospital. Please do not castigate us for making it green. Right? Even just that is enough to set women off. How dare you suggest that we should not say anything about this atrocious color, even though it's normal hospital color, right? On the inside, at least. How dare you? That's what women have done to men. And the reason men are seeking new role models isn't just because holding doors and being gentlemen isn't getting them nowhere. It's because they don't have any roadmap, any social roadmap for how to be an adult male human being in a way that people would treat as a respectable lifestyle. Every lifestyle that was respectable in the past has been tainted with female complaints. So, of course, now there's other role models, and women, like he said, are freaking the fuck out about that. Of course, they mention Andrew Tate because you can't have an article about incels without mentioning a pickup artist, pimp, whatever. Dan is speaking mainly about Andrew Tate, whose rants about why women should serve their partners why he has sought out fresh 18-year-old girls and why rape victims should bear responsibility appear all over teenage boys' social media feeds. Tate is facing trial in Romania. This is old. For human trafficking, rape, and forming an organized crime group to sexually exploit women. So I don't know what they're going to do when they can't accuse him of crimes. When there's not anything that they can. Oh, he did these things. How do you know? Because he's on trial or he's been accused, right? They will think of him that way still. They'll think of him as an accused man. And to feminists, that means guilty. Accused means guilty. But yeah. He was banned from most social media last year, but he still has an X account and live streams with his brother Tristan. He is hit and miss, says Dan, but what's the alternative? Gee, what's the alternative to Andrew Tate, guys? I have no idea who else might be talking about men's issues on the entire internet besides Andrew Tate. Huh?
Badger live streams.
There we go. But, you know, they tried to kill us. They tried to completely destroy our ability to be seen in public. Right? They tried to kill our whole channel, our whole feed, everything that we do. Now they got Andrew Tate. And he appeals to men a lot more than, quote, these fake feminized compliant doormats that feminism keeps shoving in men's faces. I don't even know who feminism keeps shoving in men's faces these days. Who's the feminist?
Scott Galloway.
Who's that guy?
He's a male feminist that keeps on saying that men need to do more.
Oh, jeez. Guys, get out there and shovel more shit.
Basically. And Dave Ramsey as well.
Jeez. I think I've ran into Dave Ramsey. I'm pretty sure I've run into Dave Ramsey.
Dave Ramsey? Wait, the financial guy?
Yeah, he's been on the talking points lately.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure that I ran into a thread that he was in, because he sounded more tradcon, but was clearly, you know, echoing feminist talking points. But I don't know if he was trying to sound. Like Matt Walsh.
Yeah, he does the same.
Yeah, it's like he was trying to sound more like a tradcon, but everything was coming out sounding more like a feminist. But at the same time, he wasn't really answering people like me in the thread. Like everybody that he responded to, if I looked at their profiles, they had about 10 times as many followers as me or more. So clearly, I could just say anything I wanted in the thread and go unchallenged, which, you know, on one hand, it's okay. On the other hand, I actually like fighting about this stuff on Twitter. So that kind of sucked. But I think that's who that was. Let's see. Some of Dan's beliefs come from his own painful childhood. He blames his mother, leaving his father for him being taken into care. My dad couldn't take care of me, he says. If I stayed with my mom, I probably could have stayed out of foster care. So that's a tough one, because probably if his mom abandoned their household and abandoned his father, that it'd be difficult if he was the household breadwinner, and had to leave for work every day and didn't have somebody to help provide care. Then he would end up by default almost being neglectful, at least by today's standards. It would definitely make things more difficult for Dan. Because when he was in the foster home, he says he was sexually assaulted by an older boy. The boy was removed from the home but never arrested. Dan thinks this is because he was a male victim. Notice she attributes this just to Dan's opinion. She doesn't say anything about, but what do you think would have happened if Dan had been Danielle and this boy had been caught doing that to her? Because you can bet he'd have been in juvie or jail, depending on how old he was. Well, if he was in a foster home, he was underage. So juvie, he definitely would have been arrested. But Dan thinks this is because he was a male victim, not this is probably because, or this may be because. But just Dan thinks this is because. So it's just all in Dan's head, right? The fact that male victims get ignored more often, that they're less likely to, their victimhood is less likely to result in arrest of their perpetrators, that their perpetrators are less likely to get charged with anything, that if they do get charged, they're less likely to get prosecuted, and if they do get prosecuted, they're less likely to get convicted. If they are convicted, it's usually of a lesser crime, and there's usually a lower sentence. So it's, it's all totally in his head. The entire legal system and the different wording of laws depending on whether or not the victim was penetrated or forced to penetrate, and or whether the assault involved just genitals or anal or anything like that. All of that's all in Dan's head. Dan is the only person who's ever thought of this, and it never happened in real life. Like that's what we're supposed to gather, right? Dan thinks this is because he was a male victim. Bitch. Yeah, it's because he was a male victim. I mean, I'm angry, of course. Angry at the police because they didn't do anything, at social services because they didn't do anything. Dan thinks about the attack a lot. He tried searching for men's sexual abuse survivor groups. Couldn't find any in person, only a few on Zoom. When he searched for women's groups, there were loads. He is concerned that allegations made by women are taken, if anything, too seriously. He says that he has also seen lots of videos about women making false allegations of rape against men. It's everywhere. He's forced a strange inversion upon his trauma. He was failed by men, but he has decided to be angry with women. Except that's not what he said. She just put that together. Made it out like it was connected. But that's not actually what he said at all. He said two very different things, probably at two different times. And she has conflated them as if they have a relationship. But the reality is, he identified who he was angry at right here. He said he was angry at the police because they didn't do anything, and at social services because they didn't do anything. That's who he's angry at. So she probably pressured him for answers about female sexual assault survivors, and also women who make accusations, and then added something that he said in response in. But he didn't attach anything like that. She doesn't have a quote of him attaching that to his anger about his experience. Dan finished high school last year, where he was, he says, an IT nerd who wasn't popular. IT guys were generally pretty lonely. We just talk to ourselves, stick to ourselves. But even when I did try and go out and talk to people, I did usually get rejected. He's continued in this vein, now works in IT services and lives alone. He has rather strict opinions about female apparel. He doesn't like makeup and fake stuff. I'm wearing makeup. It's not excessive, he says, embarrassed. Dan says his dating life is terrible. He sighs. Men like me can't get anything. You notice what she did in the middle there? She just completely... he talked about being... having difficulty finding partner because he's a nerd. Which, that's historically been a problem. And then there's another thing with nerds, all right? There's two distinct types of nerds. There are people who are nerds because they do something professionally that is nerdy, like IT, or some sort of hard science research, or operating within like the field of engineering, mechanics, things like that, where you're highly focused on mathematics and their applications and things like that. Then there's social nerds, and it's people who are their nerdiness revolves entirely around forms of nerdy entertainment, and they're not necessarily like they don't necessarily do something geeky or nerdy as a profession, and they haven't. But maybe they play Dungeons and Dragons, or they like video games or things like that. And there's overlap. There's a lot of overlap. But there's a lot of people that are only in one group or the other as well. And being in the professional nerd group makes you, as a man, more likely to have a difficult time finding a partner. Because your profession is more demanding, like of your time and of your focus, and it may even shape your mind in a way that makes you impatient with social nerds. But yeah, I know some people argue over what's a nerd and what's a geek, but when it comes down to it, geek is almost historically geek is strictly computers, and everything else is nerd, right? But there's a lot of people these days that look at it from a TV definition. Like there's some TV show defined geeks as anybody that's into unpopular hobbies and stuff, which I don't agree with that, because geek was always the person who really knew how to program your computer, how to build a computer, things like that. So, in fact, I think that the funny thing about it is that geek used to be a profession, but and now people talk about it like it's about hobbies. But anyway, so he goes on, the thing that I wanted to point out here, right? He's talking about his life, his experiences, his difficulties, and his standards. And she immediately points out she doesn't meet one of his standards. And he, not wanting to offend her, gets embarrassed and says, well, it's not excessive. Right? She doesn't say anything else. She just shows that he's willing to at least compromise this much. And then he goes on and says his dating life is terrible. So she just inserts these little moments, right? I dominated this guy into giving me a little concession about my personality aspect that doesn't meet his standards. She probably was offended too. How dare you have standards that I don't meet? Like, how dare you, sir? Most girls my age, right? They look for those hard nuts, those roadmen, those people who don't respect the other gender. Guys who just want some hot chick, tits out, really tight shorts and stuff like that. Always in a bikini. Dan sees women like this all the time, he says. He shakes his head. I'm like, whore, dirty whore. The words, uttered in his mild, disapproving voice, hang in the air. You know what? So what? Maybe he feels that way. The thing is, she doesn't have a right to decide what his standards are. Like, you think about this. If she was walking down the street and saw a guy that didn't shave and thought, bum, dirty bum, and somebody disapproved of her attitude toward that guy, wouldn't she call him a misogynist? But he's not allowed to be put off by skimpy clothes and tight clothes and too much makeup and being sexually aggressive. Why not? Why isn't he allowed to be put off by that?
Because men can't be uncomfortable.
Men can't be uncomfortable. Men can't have standards. It just, and she lectured him for it. I asked Dan if he thinks it's okay to say that. It's only some women, he says. If you just want to show off your big tits, your fake tits, if you want to show off your plastic surgery, get out of my life. These women are not in Dan's life. So she's judging him there. You see what she did there? He just said, get out of my life if you're like that. And then she said, these women are not in Dan's life. Like just this snide, oh yeah, right, like he's ever had any involvement with these women. Well, how do you know? Does she know that there's a fetish for smart people? There's actually an intelligence fetish. It exists. We will read 2 more paragraphs. No, we won't. It's actually 9:30. Holy shit, I didn't realize it was that late. So we'll stop right here. And I will highlight this because that just blows my mind that she thought that it was okay to do that. Right? He said his thing about makeup, and she highlighted that she didn't meet his standards. In a disapproving way, she highlighted it. And then she disapproved of him having standards for other women. She disapproved of him not wanting to be around a certain type of women. And then she looked down on him, right? Condescended to him by saying, well, these women are not in Dan's life. All she can do is judge. She can't really listen. She can't do what a journalist does. She can't try to understand. She can't give just the facts so that other people can try to understand. She has to badmouth, belittle, lecture, cajole, castigate, and mock.
That's what
it.
women do.
Yeah, I've had enough of it. I can't disagree with that. But it's still ugly. Like, these women think that men like this are ugly, but they're nowhere near as ugly as this woman is. Maybe not in her face, but her attitude and her behavior.
Her personality is ugly.
Yep. Her personality. Her personality would make a troll run away in terror. It's so ugly. Pretty sad. Like, I wonder if she knows that she's a bitch.
I think she does. She religious, isn't it?
You think she gets off on it?
Yeah.
See, I suspect as much too. There's some women you can't always tell, like, right? Some of them are just that way, and like they don't even realize they're being bitchy. But I think this woman knows that she's a bitch and is enjoying every minute of it. But all right, well, we will cut it right here. Megaka92 says, I only date women with an accountability fetish. I like that. Meredith G gave us $5 and said, HBR Talk 401, honey for the Badgers. That was our last super chow. I did not see any super chats go flying by. So I'm just going to scroll back through the entire show's worth of... Nope. Going all the way back to Signal, I do not see a super chat. So that will be it. Thanks, everybody, for listening. Thanks to all my co-hosts for going through this nasty bitches article with me. We've still got a ways to go, too. Thanks very much to Brian for making sure this can happen and going late with us again this week. Good night, everybody.
Night.
Men's rights activists are machines, dude. Okay? They are literal machines. They are talking point machines. They are impossible to fucking deal with, especially if you have like a couple dudes who have good memory on top of that too. Holy shit, you're fucked.